What, you thought I wouldn't take a second mortgage out on my house and auction my kidney to get a day one, okay, well, almost day one review of the 57-inch Neo G9 up? Well, think again, because I did, and unlike most reviews of this monitor, this one won't be garbage because I care about you all so much, lip kisses, but enough jerking around the bush. Let's first talk specs. So the Samsung Odyssey 57-inch Neo G9, God, they should have changed the name, but they didn't, and here we are, is a 7680 by 2160. Yes, you heard me correctly. That is two 4K monitors side by side, slammed together, 240 Hz, which, by the way, as a warning, I believe you still need an AMD graphics card RX 7000 series to actually run that, although I do know NVIDIA told me they're looking into it. Might be fixed in the future. We'll see. 57-inch 32:9 mini LED monitor with 2,392 local dimming zones. It is FreeSync Premium Pro. I think G-Sync works on this monitor, although your experience might not be quite as good. And then it has an HDR rating of VESA Display HDR 1000, which is a big deal because normally they call these things like HDR 2000 or something, and then it ends up being nowhere near that type of an experience. So it's great to see they're actually getting it certified, which is a green flag actually, and leads me to believe this could be a pretty good monitor. Although the stand that comes with it, guys, absolutely sucks. Here's the good news. I did find a monitor arm over on Amazon for around $100, I think. I will have an Amazon affiliate link to it as well as the monitor in the description below if you do want to check those out and save a ton of money versus buying an Ergotron, as that's just a waste. But in terms of ports, you want to know, there it is on the screen. Go ahead and pause if needed. It is VESA mount compatible, so that's really good. And at a price of $2,499.99, this is one of the most expensive displays I have purchased thus far, and this is only possible thanks to your guys' support. But in any case, what are my general thoughts of this real quick before we get into all the nitty-gritty? And honestly, overall, I'll just tell you guys, I was a little shocked by this monitor. I was expecting it to be a dumpster fire. I really was. And the great news is it's actually pretty good. You can do stuff like not only play games at 32:9, which by the way is a horrible experience in the vast majority of games, but the great news is 32:9 is not only really good for work, but also you can create a 21:9 resolution, which I will put over on my Patreon to show you guys how to do that, which means you can run 5120 by 2160, which is not only far easier to run, but also has far less issues in terms of compatibility for gaming, which is really, really good. So the experience there is absolutely excellent. And you can also run 16:9 regular 4K if you want as well. And to make matters even better, guys, not only did 240 Hz actually work on a 7900 XTX and 7800 XT, although you do have to unplug secondary monitors, so that could be an issue, but also I didn't spot any scan lines, and that has been a reoccurring issue for Samsung, so that is really good to see. But what does it look like in terms of color? And honestly, guys, my overall impressions are it's actually pretty dang good. Not quite as good as the best quantum dot OLED gaming monitors as well as TVs out there. However, in terms of a LCD-based technology, because this is mini LED, I found it to be pretty good overall. Now, in terms of the calibration, it certainly wasn't perfect, although thankfully I was able to improve upon it greatly in sRGB. And once again, in my Patreon, I will have the ICC profile as well as settings that you need to change to get this to be far more correct for editing, which I do highly recommend taking a look at. And then also taking a look at the HDR calibration. Unfortunately, not so great. So this might not be like the best HDR editing monitor, although I didn't find it to be horrible. But what about the color volume? And here, honestly, it's pretty good, although it does fall a little bit short of stuff like quantum dot OLED, both in sRGB as well as HDR, but getting close to 100% DCI-P3, not bad. But what about brightness? This is very important for mini LED as well as OLED monitors to give you a really good HDR experience, and in a 100% window, thankfully, it's actually pretty dang good. Full screen, 866 nits on a screen this large is very, very impressive. But in a 10% window, it is incredibly bright, guys. This is the second brightest monitor I have ever measured at 1460 nits. Unfortunately, doesn't quite get that bright in an actual game because it does have to limit things to make sure there's not a ton of blooming. But regardless, the overall scene, in my opinion, was far brighter than the vast majority of OLEDs that I've seen thus far. But now let's go ahead and move on to the minimum brightness. And here I was blown away. I measured just 0.01 nits, which is absolutely insanely low as a minimum brightness for mini LED, and that actually translated, guys, into a contrast ratio of 86,300 to 1, a really, really good contrast ratio for mini LED, meaning you're gonna get really bright brights next to really dark darks, and it's gonna look absolutely fantastic for HDR. But what about the blooming? And overall, I'd say it was actually pretty good. Of course, there's always room for improvement. Certain things can give you a little bit of haloing around text or other objects, especially if it's a very dark scene. However, this is probably one of the best implementations of mini LED when it comes to blooming I have ever seen. But is it actually any good for gaming? What about the latency? And guys, you're gonna be shocked. I know I was. This is the fastest 4K display I have ever measured in terms of total system latency, 27.3 milliseconds, the next fastest being the Neo G9, and then the next fastest after that being the Quantum.OLED S95C. Of course, that's at a lower refresh rate, so you would expect that. But that's really, really good to see out of mini LED, because mini LED typically suffers from some extra input lag because of the, well, mini LED backlight, and here seems to not really be the case. Very, very impressive stuff. But what about the ghosting? I mean, is it going to be a blurry mess in motion? And guys, once again, very impressed. It's actually really good overall. Of course, it does fall a little bit short of the Asus OLED on the right there. As you can see, that is a bit more clean in motion for sure. That would probably be at least arguably one of the best options on the market when it comes to competitive gaming. And for this to come even kind of close to that is really good at the same 240 hertz. So I'm very impressed there. Now at 120 hertz, it does get a little bit blurred, but it's actually not too bad. And of course at 60 hertz, it's pretty blurry. That is something that you would expect to see at a lower refresh rate like that. But what about text clarity in here? Absolutely fantastic, because it's regular RGB, so there's nothing weird going on there with the subpixels, and it shows in really, really good text clarity. But what about the finish? And here's the bad news, guys. It is using a matte finish, although I'll give him credit. It doesn't seem, maybe I'm going crazy, but it does not seem nearly as bad as the Neo G9's finish for whatever reason. Of course, I would much prefer a glossy finish on this, because that would lead to better clarity, it would lead to better contrast ratios, and it would lead to better perceived vibrancy as well. But I guess we get what we get. I think I know why they thought it would be a good idea, because it is a 1000R curve, so it could pick up a lot of reflections, but realistically, a matte finish doesn't help, it just diffuses it. So if you put it in a Lightroom, it's just gonna look washed out versus giving you reflections. So that's not better in my opinion, but I know why they thought it would be a good idea. Reality, terrible idea. It could have been a much better display than it is. And you couple that with the very bad viewing angles, because yes, mini LED tends to have bad viewing angles, and the also pretty bad uniformity. And this thing definitely is not a perfect monitor. It's got its issues, guys. There's no doubt about that. And if you can't stand a matte finish, it's not like you're gonna magically unsee it. It's there. Although again, probably not the worst I've seen. Okay, so it's ungodly expensive. It's not OLED, and it's by no means a perfect monitor, especially considering it has a hideous matte finish. But despite that, guys, and it pains me to say this, especially considering the outrageous price, but in reality, this is, in my opinion right now, the best gaming monitor on the market. Now, the reason I say that is because there's just no other monitor on the market right now that can deliver an experience like this. And to me, this is just a massive upgrade over their previous flagship, the Neo G9, which was plagued with issues. And surprisingly, that's not the case here. So overall, you're basically getting exactly what you're paying for, which to me is a bit of a surprise coming from Samsung, as I've had a lot of issues with them in the past personally. And playing games, guys, at 5120 by 2160 ultra wide, when it's supported well at 240 hertz, is just a really, really great experience, especially in HDR, which this has honestly pretty dang good HDR overall. It's very bright, it has good color, it has great contrast, it's fast. Everything about this display is really, really good. It just has some issues when it comes to, the clarity and uniformity and stuff like that. So it's not perfect, very expensive, but I gotta give it the thumbs up because my God, it is a really good monitor, especially for work at 32:9. And you guys know I'm not a huge fan of ultrawide because of its compatibility issues, but it's really just that good. So if you want to order it, again, I will have Amazon affiliate links in the description below. And you can also go ahead and pick up that monitor stand, save yourself a ton of money not buying an Ergotron. Whether you're looking to connect a new console, gaming PC, or just need a fast and reliable HDMI cable to connect over long distances, Rupro has you covered with their certified 8K HDMI 2.1 fiber optic cable available in sizes of up to 50 feet and can deliver a perfect full 48 gigabits per second connection over distances other cables could only dream of reaching. And with 48 gigabits per second of bandwidth, it can easily drive 8K 60 FPS or 4K 144 FPS 10-bit HDR video through its ultra-thin, flexible, and durable housing, and it even supports ER. So if you're in the market for a cable that can drive a beautiful new TV or monitor, be sure to check out Rupro on Amazon today.